And I was looking
All right,
at
let's
the
use
time by the
our
time
time.
Good reference. We try like those stories because it's like everyone's writing it and you're not really going to add that much of your own flavor. You try and keep it as short as possible. But other stories, I mean, some stories take a week, some stories take months. Our editing process is very rigorous, which is good in some ways, but can also be really frustrating because it's slow. So if it's a complicated story, I think it usually has like at least 3 hours of editing, if not days. So it really varies.
How much of your work is like tweet and like other shorter things versus like longer pieces?
I think it switches off every week, like if I'm
depending
on
on what
duty,
rotation.
yeah. But I try and not have the bulk of my stories be like breaking news. It's just that there's a lot more of
Yeah.
it. But like ideally, I would do on my off weeks at least one like larger, less breaking story per week, if not more. But it depends on what's happening and how long or how big of a project a specific story is.
So I know that like print newspapers are not as like common anymore. That a lot of people get their news from online, and you were talking about how you can update articles. How does that? Yeah, like are there certain articles that get published in the physical, like the paper Wall Street Journal, and some that don't? And is that information like the stuff that could change? Is that all online? Or
It's interesting. I mean, what they're doing now, and I kind of disagree with how they're doing it, is that they're trying to jam as many stories as possible into the paper and they just shrink them. So, like, I'll write a story that I think is, like, really interesting and really important, and it will literally be, like, a brief that looks like a postage stamp in the paper. So that can be frustrating. I think what would make more sense as these things change is to have the paper be bigger stories that are more analytical and less things that could change because it's more, either a big investigation or looking at how, analyzing the day's news rather than trying to squeeze all of the breaking news of a day into a paper, because I don't think that's what people are using newspapers for as much anymore, because I think they get their news on their phone all day long, and by the time you're reading it the next morning, it's old. So I think that they're always shifting how they decide to do those things. Right now, it seems to be just shrinking all the stories, but I think they're trying to maybe move a little bit away from that, or I'm hopeful that they will.
So that being said, how have you seen that there are more people reading your stories online than there are in actual print and buying the print?
I never know the numbers for any of this stuff. I mean, I don't know who reads what stories. I don't know what our print. I think we definitely have more print subscribers than digital subscribers, but the only thing I can really see is who is reading or how many like clicks my story is getting and when. And we don't like to always look at that because you don't necessarily want to be driven by that. But if you go up with a really big story, it is fun to like see the people who can like spike at a certain hour, and you can see like how it's doing relative to other stories. So that can be exciting, but I don't know how it stacks up to how they're reading print.
With so many new reporters now because of the new development of the political administration, how does you being directly in the White House make you more profitable as a journalist?
Interesting.
Maddie's like, I just want to know about the money.
how much money you make?
I mean, profitable. I wouldn't be in the White House if I weren't working at the Wall Street Journal. So it's not like I have this like unique White House access that I could bring to another publication that doesn't have a desk in the White House. I think it's definitely it's a weird job because it is so breaking news focused that a lot of times it feels like anybody could do this job. Anyone can write up a Trump tweet. And yet it is like one of the very well-regarded beats in Washington. And I think that's in part a relic of a time when not that many reporters were allowed into the White House. Briefings were smaller, and I think there was also just less interest. Now, like, the briefing room is packed. The White House, especially this administration, has let in all these random outlets, basically. And I think it's less of a thing that only a couple So it's a cool beat. I don't know that I'm more profitable because of it.
I was wondering. So I was really into the show House of Cards for a while because it was like really exciting to like see it, but I have only seen the first season. But anyway, is being a reporter in Washington like anything like it's shown in the media, like in Hollywood?
Is it anything like, no. I mean, no. I think people get really annoyed by House of Cards because like this image of like female reporters always like sleeping with their sources is not a helpful thing for female reporters because as a whole, I think they don't do that. So, I mean, I think there are moments that feel very exciting. Have you ever watched The Newsroom? I like that show. Yeah.
I like
really
this
good.
show.
It's
Is
a
it on
fun
Netflix?
show. It's on HBO.
Okay, I'll see.
So I think that one. I think that one also like overplayed the drama. Obviously, I mean, I think a regular newsroom would be a very boring show, but I think it was a little bit more spot on in terms of how people go about interacting with their sources and getting a story. I don't think it's quite as nefarious as it looks in House of Cards.